They're out of recycled wood I got out of a roofer's skip in order just to give it some stability. The boxes themselves are Langstroth size, American Langstroth size boxes, and this is because in South America, where Oscar Perone was working, that was the most frequently used box, and he developed all his techniques recycling old Langstroth boxes.
We haven't got Langstroth boxes, but we're lucky to have a builder and joiner living next door to us who gives us loads of old wood, so it's been constructed out of this.
Yeah, it's treated with linseed and beeswax mixture, about 10% beeswax melted and then painted on as well. Just give you that bit of information. So it's attached to the floor. It's got as you can see at the front here, that is the door.
That very small space is
and
the door.
as you can see, as we build the hive, you might think that's a small door, and it is a small door. It's actually roughly about 5 square centimetres. Oscar Perone gives a dimension of 5 centimetres wide by 1 centimetre high, but I think their mice might be bigger than our mice, so I've actually reduced the height of the door down to about
the area, so the area is the same.
So we actually have the same area.
And he argues that door size is important in a hive of this size, and it's to do with air exchange and managing condensation and levels of water within the hive and heat. Go for it.
Okay.
Boxes on.
So here we are. This is the basic unit. It's a 10 centimetre high raise, he calls it. A look at that. It's it round, and it is Langstroth size, which is the internal dimensions is about 365 by 746, 476, I think.
If you don't want to follow it, feel free to put it down.
But that's and the concept is that it's like a people's hive. So it means that once it's built, the units are quite small in order that anybody can lift them and use them. I have actually, because I'm quite a big fella,
and because he wasn't thinking of me because I was poorly at the time,
I've actually doubled mine up.
And when we build another one, I want it to be units of that size, so when we're moving around in the beekeeper space, I can move those. So that's why we thought it was important to show that. It's so anybody, you know, whether you're weak or strong, big or small, you can move that box.
So one of the first things is the brood box, and the brood area is huge, absolutely huge. And on top of the brood area,
hang on, we need to put our stick.
Is that two brood boxes then?
That's three
all brood.
Yeah, or 6 of the.
It's 6 of these units, and if we built it again, we would probably, to be honest, build it as this as one unit, because once the bees are in here, you never touch this, you never open it. It's their space, it's private, and when he's done a bit more, I'm going to be sticking a hands-off, keep outside on it, just to really make that point. Okay?
Home exchange, how often would you?
Never.
Never, it's up to them.
No. Wax moth does it for you. Theory.
You wouldn't do a clean out thing, so.
Only if the colony dies, you would clean it out and off it goes. But the whole principle of this hive is that it is a huge and super colony. You can imagine that the bees living in here, it is started from a prime swarm. They go in, you either bait them in this part of the hive. They go in there and they build a huge super colony, which has a huge potential for keeping itself healthy.
Basically, the theory is that you want a prime swarm to go into this. You can't put bees that have lived in any other boxes in this hive, because what Perone says, and he's working with a lot of universities in South America, and what they have found is that when bees move into a box, after 3 days, they're basically pre-programmed to live in that box. So it's almost like they move in, put their stand like this and go, right, okay, we need to do this much work, we need this much material, and then they set about doing it. So you can't transfer bees from another box into this. You need a prime swarm, and you need to put it in within 3 or 4 days so it can cope with the size of the box. Because if you know, if you've seen a prime swarm, if you've been in a prime swarm, you'll know they're extremely vigorous. You know, they just go whoosh. So you can't transfer bees from other boxes. It's got to be a swarm.
But they will have come from other boxes, won't they?
Not if they swarmed. there'll be a swarm.
Yeah, but won't they, if they're not a wild swarm, they will have come from another hive?
Yes, but
yeah.
it will be a new colony.
You can't-
So the new colony
You're
will
saying you
program.
can't take a nuke and then put the frames
Yeah,
in
I
there.
understand.
No, you can't.
And you can't
no.
do a shook swarm. You can't just take
Right.
your one, shake them all in there. They're not in that. They're not in that mode. It's not the correct balance of bees. For a swarm is a very, very particular group of the flying bees, and it has an age range, and it's constituted from a lot of different types. The bees of different ages, not just the older bees that leaving with the old queen.
It's not like an artificial swarm.
And it's not like an
No.
artificial one. So it has to be started from a prime swarm,
You?
preferably from a feral colony. There's a flaw. We don't have many feral colonies. We do have quite a lot of feral colonies, but whether the chance of actually getting a prime swarm from a feral colony is really quite difficult.
But a prime swarm will do. It needs to come from a prime swarm. Ideally, you want to tempt it and lure it to come into this lovely box that you've made. What Oscar Perone does is he puts the nibblings and the crumbs from wax moth in there, so bits of wax, nibblings, so you have the smell. And what that does to the bees, to the swarm, is it suggests that this is a suitable place for bees to live. It suggests that it is a place where bees have lived, and it encourages them to move in themselves. So we plan to locate this by our bees, and hopefully they will swarm, and hopefully they will move in. But obviously it is an issue. You can't just buy a box of bees and put them in. You can't put a nuke in. That is a limitation on it. Do you want to carry on building?
Yep. Okay. The next thing is the comb grid. Are some of you familiar with comb grid? That's just to support any combs that grow down from the comb grid in. It gives a bit of extra support. Some people will use these spales running across, and he does suggest either way, or a branch, and that's just a little branch that we've brought along and indicated that that's the kind of thing that you might do.
Yeah, we've only bought one
Want a bit of a
branch. I mean,
branchier
ideally you'd have a few more branches, and it's so that they can build their comb as they want. They can build natural comb they can build it in any size they want and in any way they want, and we're not going to poke about. So this is just so they have support. That's all it is. It's a bit like what you'd have in a tree. That's what we're trying to mimic. Although obviously it's a rectangular box. Okay.
The next thing is the comb grid, the starter strips. Now, he was very particular about how he wanted the spacings of the comb grid, and he is using a 34mm centre spacing. So that means the centre of each top bar is 34mm away from the other. And these are 24mm bars, so he's giving them a 10mm space to run up and down. Very particular about that, because he says that a smaller bee is less prone to tracheal mites. Now this is obviously a problem for the bees, and if you've got a smaller trachea, the mites can't enter your trachea so readily.
And the reason you will get smaller bees is because you'll have natural comb. He argues that the bees will make natural comb. They will regulate their comb size. They will actually make a smaller comb, a smaller cell than you get when you use foundation in your hives. Therefore they will produce a smaller bee, and simply because they're smaller bees and they have a smaller trachea, then they're going to be less susceptible to tracheal mites, simply because they can't live there, they can't exist there. And he makes a similar argument, it's one of the arguments he makes about Varroa as well, but we'll get onto that in a bit hopefully.
Yeah.
We need to crack on, we've only got half an hour.
Okay.
Sorry, what did you say was on the undersurface of those starter bars?
Yeah, starter strips with wax.
Wax,
Right.
painted on.
Yeah, he does it in a different way. He gouges a line and fills, but I couldn't do that. I've got a kitchen table to make all this on. So
you've just taken wax that's melted down from used
Yeah.
combs and
And
so forth.
these are toffee apple sticks, aren't they?
yeah, these are toffee apple sticks, just 2 toffee apple sticks attached
Right.
to the bottom
Do
of
you
the
want to
bars.
show? Do you want to
Lollipop sticks are cheaper.
And toffee apple sticks. They're very cheap.
Barbecue sticks.
Actually, we've got another one, haven't we? I'll get another one out. Sorry, it's all right. I'll just get another one of these frames out so people can have a look.
No, it's 2 for each. Okay. So you make up the grids.
To attach the wax to.
Yeah. So this is for them
that's
to
the-
start building their wax from, and it's a lollipop with it's a toffee apple stick, 2 toffee apple sticks with wax painted on. So I'll just put it. Does anybody want to have a look? Shall I put
Yes,
it?
please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andy, I see these are down by. Is that a bee space?
No, it's just one of the things that he suggests doing, and I made a whole group of them for the same things, and you'll see as we build the hive higher. It just means that I can run a wire underneath and give myself a little bit of a leave a chunk for them to restart next time when we get up to the honey bars, and it's just a matter of how I designed the top ones, and this bottom one seemed to be. So bees will sort their own spaces out.
So just to reiterate, you don't go in there. The bees literally do what they like, and those of you who heard the talk just now, I'm sure you all did. David Heath, he was talking about nest scent, he was talking about pheromones, he was talking about bees being able to regulate the temperature and so retain colony health. The reason we became interested in this design was because Oscar uses this design. He uses it in temperate regions of Argentina, very similar climatic conditions, and he uses it with European bees, and he's very successful. His colonies stay, and we're taking success in terms of his colonies stay alive year on year, and he gets a good honey crop as well. So we think that's good. Fill the next bit.
The next one, the next box is
also for the bees.
This is the bees' box for their own larder, their food supply. Goes in here, and it's attached to another comb grid.
Now this is 2 of the units that you saw, and these are the bees' private honey reserves. You never touch these. This is their area again, and this honey barrier, as he calls it, fulfills 2 functions. The first one is obviously it stores for them. The second one is it's hygroscopic, so it absorbs moisture, so it helps with it contributes to controlling problems like condensation within the hive. So it takes up moisture, and it also provides, sorry, I'm trying to drawing pin and talk at the same time, which is actually surprisingly challenging, you know.
Even though you're a woman.
Even though I'm a woman. Ooh, maybe I've got a bit much testosterone, who knows? What was I saying? I've completely lost my thread. Testosterone. Yeah, it's hygroscopic, so it takes up water, so it helps with the issue of condensation within the hive. You know, damp, soggy bees really aren't healthy bees. They're very often dead bees. But also, it's actually a natural insulating layer, a breathable layer. So if any of you are walkers or have waterproof coats, and they like Gore-Tex, are you familiar with Gore-Tex? Mm-hmm. It's like, he says it's like that for bees. It's their own Gore-Tex insulating roof. But if I can get my drawing pins in, as you can see, the beekeeper doesn't touch it. Next one.
Okay. So the next thing that goes on, and we'll talk about what happens in the lower part of the queen doesn't go up. The queen stays down there. You put the swarm goes in, and within 3 days you build this thing to its full height, which we'll carry on and we'll do now. This is the first beekeeper's box on the grid.
Now it has a grid, each one has a grid, and that's actually for the ease of the beekeeper. It's so the beekeeper can harvest honey without having to, because somebody said to me, and I completely understand the point, why don't you just let the bees build long comb within the beekeeper's area? And the reason is, from a purely selfish point of view, if I want to be able to harvest honey, I want to be able to take boxes off and harvest them easily. I don't want to be wrestling with a giant box and really long combs. So this is another thing I liked about the design.
Do you just add these keepers on as the honey?
No, it's always the same size. You always keep it. It's a fixed size all year. It's always this size.
You build it on
How do you get the top ones down?
That's
And
what,
my
leather.
top
Chair.
that's what those concrete blocks are for.
Stand on with concrete blocks.
But do you handle them in the double size? You might have to, wouldn't you?
What do
Well,
you
this
mean?
one, in this one,
Humble bees?
Yes,
yeah.
you would.
Incredibly
That's
heavy.
how I've made them.
Yeah. So
need-
they'd be awfully heavy.
They would be awfully heavy. That's why I waved this. That's why I waved this box at you. And it's like a tiny woman's reminder that we like doing beekeeping too. And I'm not going to hump a giant box like that around.
So yeah, but how are you going to?
Have a grid
With this one?
on every shallow
Yeah, I mean,
box.
how are you going? You
No, you'd
can't
have the grid on the
half
double
one,
box.
can you?
no, you
how
can
he
because
suggested
this is 2 boxes attached. This
Right.
is so
Want to have a small
this
Yeah, but it'll be a even though it's
is that.
Yeah.
even though it's be properlised together,
So you just dismantle it,
to draw
layer on there.
wire through.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Right.
or just ping them apart.
Queen naturally not climb up,
But in my case,
Well,
or
he again.
we're in 2 groups now.
What he argues and what his findings say, and I have to say what we've observed in our top bars are the laying tends to go on near the air down towards the bottom, and that's what he says as well. So I can't say I've observed it in this kind of hive because I haven't, but I can say in my top bars I've noticed they want to be as near the air as possible for their nest, near the door. So, and that's what he says as well. He says that she's going to argue where the air is circulating well, so obviously it's not going to be so great up here. And also there is a tendency for a queen not to want to go through a really big honey barrier, and there is going to be a really big honey barrier here as well.
But my understanding is that you sometimes get this problem of tunnelling, so that the queen does go all the way up and you get a whole channel of brood through the middle and you get the
Yes.
honey all the way around the
Yeah.
edge.
That's always possible.
Yeah, this is something that we'll have to look at when people start building these hives in Europe and in the UK here, and these are the results that we want to be able to see whether this happens or not.
Yeah. Andy, another observation is whenever I've supered a box, a top box, the bees will always start building comb on top of the bars below. That they need a ladder to get up. Just a little wax ladder, piece of string with wax will help them get up to the next top bars. Otherwise, they just start building on. It's a bit like building a stalactite from the bottom. Sorry, is it stalactite or stalagmite?
Stalagmite.
Mites come down, mites go up. Yeah.
So it's a bit like a stalagmite, the way they start to build the comb.
So yeah, you might be right. It might be useful doing that. I mean, the thing is, we're not claiming to be experts. We've looked at the theory and we've looked at the findings, and we've looked at how it works in temperate places with European bees, and we're thinking this is a system where you have very limited interference. Once a year you turn up and harvest your honey crop, and if it works, that would be grand. Oscar Perone equates large colonies. Basically, he sees a colony as an organism, as most people do, and he thinks of a large colony in the same way as you think of an immune system, really. So for him, a big colony equals a healthy functioning immune system, and a small colony he says is less healthy and less able to deal with pests and disease. And the reason he gives for that is the bees can produce as many bees as they want in here. They can produce as many different types of bees as they want in here, so they can regulate hive hygiene, they can clean their nest out, they can produce as many foragers as they want, so they can keep their stores up, they can marginalise and cope with disease. And so this is why we're interested, and this is why we're trying to encourage people to give it a go and see if it works.
And overwintering?
Overwintering, there's a bit on the board about nest temperature and what particular about overwintering.
How big? I mean, you're going to take the honey off, but
It comes off and goes straight back on.
Same hour.
so you leave.
Yeah.
So you would cut all the honey out and leave those empty 4 boxes
Yeah.
on top. So you'd have the brood at the bottom.
The brood would be here, and
with
this would be the
their
honey
and
barrier.
then an empty void.
Empty
Yeah.
void, yeah.
But a big thick honey barrier between them and the void. And that's how he overwinters
So in
his bees.
September time, you take all this off, do you?
from there.
So it goes straight
Take it
back
from
on.
up here. Well,
You take it off and harvest the honey. And then put the honey
yeah,
back on.
we think we'd probably take it off, but this is just a matter of preference. We would take it off before the ivy nectar flow, just because I think ivy honey's horrible, and it's also very crystalline, so we'd be taking it off before the